Hi, this is Todd Ballinger with Kendall Todd. I'm here today with Jack Kinsey of Chicago Bank Corp. Welcome, Jack.
Thanks, Todd. Good to be here.
Hey, man, thanks for taking the time. We were going to, after a conversation we had, take a few minutes to just let you share some key points and concepts and ideas that you felt like would be helpful. I know I always like to tell people you hail from the liability side of the balance sheet. Is that right? You're primarily day-to-day a lender?
Yes, I am.
Great. How many years have you been in the business, Jack?
I got in the business in late '05, so it's, almost 5 years now.
Almost 5 years. Excellent. And when you look at this particular tool we're going to talk about today, have you used tools in the past, or are you kind of new to using a liability type presentation tool?
Yeah, let me just give you a little deeper background. When I first got into the business, I think for the first year, I lived the life of my fees are $25 less than the guy online, and so people defected. And at the end of the day, I said, this is not for me. I've got to do something better. And so I went and educated myself. I got MMG for mortgage-backed securities. I bought Mortgage Coach. I got CMPS certified, and basically educated myself to the point where I really began to understand debt and strategy very, very seriously. I'm an extremely analytical person. I used to be an electrical engineer in my other life, and I've got an MBA, and I sort of bring all of that to the table. And so I really started using Borrow Smart from loving Mortgage Coach. Okay, so that's, and I really get into the numbers with my clients, and that's the way I basically sell my value.
Awesome. And as you've been sort of using this now, how long have you been actually using this tool now?
I think it's probably been, I don't know, maybe a month or so since it was offered.
Great.
Maybe it was like mid-July.
Cool.
And I went on right away and downloaded it. I did all the training videos, and when I've been going through your case studies as you mailed them out, and just trying to really learn and see the power of it and the simplicity of it. And I'm not an expert. I find I have issues that I have to work through when I do it, but compared to anything I've used before, it's far more dramatic and illustrative of what you're trying to do, and it's a lot easier to configure at the same time. So that's just a great combination in my mind.
No, that's our kind of goal is what we call fast, easy, and accurate. Our goal is to be the fastest, easiest, most accurate tool that you'll find. I mean, our background is working with financial advisors, and if you've ever worked with financial advisors and CPAs, they will really work you hard when it comes to numbers and justifying the math. So that's been an important part of our heritage, so to speak. But we're really working, and most of our focus now is to make things simpler. But I think it's great because many of the folks that might be picking us up may be experienced users having multiple months under their belt, and others are just getting the software. They've downloaded, installed it. They haven't even done their first plan yet. And this series is designed to help them sort of look through the eyes of people, peers in their industry. I'm interviewing a realtor next week for the series who has downloaded it and is using it as a way to differentiate himself as a realtor. So it's important just to see how this works. And I thought if we could just take a few minutes and maybe you could go through and highlight some of your favorite features and ways that you use it to help differentiate yourself in your market and not have to be the guy who's $25 cheaper than the last guy.
Right. Well, I thank goodness I left that model behind me 4 years ago.
That's great.
And I don't actually have a case on this, but anybody. I actually did a recent refinance for a client who was very debt averse, and he had a line of credit for about $75,000, and it was about to run its time, and he would have to pay it off and get something else. And he had the cash to actually just pay it off and leave. And using mortgage coach, I generated some options for him, basically a high case, a low case, and a medium case. And every time I generate a case for him, we'd go through it. But then he'd say, well, what if we just change the return that we're going to get on my investment from 4 to 6? What happens? And, of course, then you have to go back to your desk. You've got to run a new case, print it out, somehow get it to him. And it's just not real easy to go through case, variable after variable. And with this software, all you have to do is do one little trial loan application and put 2 different loans in, and you'll start pushing the sliders one way or another. And the value of it is that if the client's there with you, they can ask all those questions and you can have your answer immediately. I've never seen anything so user-friendly that can do that.
That's fantastic. And you're starting, you'd said earlier, you're starting to do more of the desktop sharing. Are you going to incorporate that more into your practice to be able to not have to go back and forth so much with a client, to just simply go through in real time and share?
I never felt like I could do it with Mortgage Coach because it was too complicated. The numbers were great. It's very sophisticated in terms of what it can model. But I never felt like I could actually use this with a client. And my last 2 clients, I actually brought my laptop with me. I kind of showed them what we can do as far as how we're going to analyze things. And then I also said, and then later, after we do a loan, if we're buying a home, now we're going to look at how do we repay this. And that's going to be stage 2 of our ongoing relationship. And I showed them how the snowball works and how we could pay the rest of their debts off. And they were just totally blown away. And they said, we can't wait to have that second session. And that was something that, is just really promoting an ongoing reason for us to have a relationship. And because you can do it right there at the time of working on buying a home, you really set yourself up for doing stuff later, and they really want you to help them.
Well, show us a couple things on the screen here, just some examples of what you're talking about.
Okay, so let me just do this one. This is from a client where, and basically I worked with them for about a year, and they had an old home that was very expensive, and they wanted to figure out how to pay their debt off. We worked a year on trying to work through that, and eventually came to the conclusion that they had to actually sell that place, downsize, in order to free up some cash. So that's what we did. Mm-hmm. So I did that transaction. That was long before I had Borrow Smart. And I had told them in that first year about the snowball technique. And it wasn't that effective because we just didn't have the resources to work through it. Uh-huh. But they never really quite saw how powerful it was. So now we've refinanced. We've lowered their monthly budget, and we still haven't made that much progress on the other debt. So I've got all their debt in, and you can see on this particular screen. Whoops, let me go back there. They have a lot of debt, a lot of credit card debt, and car loans, you name it. Mm-hmm. And a lot to try to manage through. And how do we really get them excited about a way to repay this? And so this particular one is just a repayment. It's a debt thing. We're not doing anything with the mortgage right now. Mm-hmm. And so now we go over to the repay. And I really like this whole idea of if you're going to create a debt for somebody, you also want to create a strategy for repayment of that debt. And although we're not addressing the mortgage per se, this is going to address just their other debts. And of course, if all we do is the normal payment, you can see at the very bottom here, I'm highlighting with the mouse, how all of their credit card and other debts just extend out for 12, 14, 15 years.
Sure.
And so obviously there's a better way to do it. And of course, when I told them the snowball, they could see the logic, but here's the beauty of this program. All I do is go down to this box and I say, let's do the snowball with the lowest balance. And now here, what this basically shows is that if we take the approach of paying the lowest balance first, minimum payment, on everything, and then as much as we can afford on the minimum balance, and then when that's paid off, we transfer that to the next lowest. And what that does is that allows them to actually become debt-free in about 10 years at a savings of $255,000. Now, we could never make a picture of this before, and they never could really get a grasp that they would have things paid off. Now, what I want to really focus on, though, is I'm not really with them saying we're going to pay off the mortgage yet, but if we just look, most of their debt is paid off in under 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really kind of what we're focusing on in terms of the credit cards. And if you print a report, this actually tells you item by each one of these items in the legend here exactly how those balances will go down, how much interest they're saving, et cetera, et cetera. And so this was good. But now our discussion with them is, okay, we've done the mortgage, we've saved you some money. Now what do we do with that money? And so of the money we saved them, I've been telling them, let's take half of that and let's figure out what to do with it. And so we said, okay, we saved you $500 a month. Let's take $200 of that and put it right here, additional money we have. And now just to show you how this works, if we save that, then we create this green graph right here. And when they actually, in year 7, they've got $20,000. So they could decide to do with that whatever they wanted, as long as they keep this payment of $28.68 going. Or we could say, let's prepay. Let's take that 20 instead of investing it. Let's move this slider all the way over here, and let's use that 200 to prepay all of our debt as it becomes the hot item.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, now you see they can be totally debt-free in 8 years, 9 months. Now, the beauty of this is, if you made this with any other software I've ever used, if you could describe this and print it out and give it to them, the next thing they would say was, well, what if we only put 100? And now you'd be coming back, and this is where it's so great, because now all I do is I put 100 in here. I guess I have to click tab.
Yeah, hit tab, yeah.
And now, automatically up here in blue, you can see that now instead of 8 years, 9 months, it's 9 years, 2 months. And basically, the functionality that I'm demonstrating here works on all the variables: return on investment, after-tax savings rates, appreciation. It's really as simple as moving these sliders, and you instantly see graphically or in numbers, depending on what part you're looking at, the impact. And it's so user-friendly that you can do it with a client, which saves everybody wonderful time.
Yeah, and what you're showing is something that some people don't even realize that's in the software. I've had people ask about this, and I'm like, well, you haven't watched all the videos, have you? Because what you've done, if you scroll up just a little bit, on where they can kind of see maybe the bottom of the other graph there, come back down just a little bit so you can see the bottom graph there a little. So in the top graph, you're still at 20 years, you're still paying on that existing mortgage, but in the bottom, you're saying that you're going to be debt-free in 9 years, 2 months by snowballing that debt. That green line there, we call it the splashdown, is that point at which you're debt-free. You no longer have anything to apply that money against, and at that point, that full $28.68 becomes available for savings. So over the 20-year period, and it's still going because in the top, you still haven't even paid off the debt, but you're just seeing that line growing over that time period to create some wealth for the future. But you'll notice that you're comparing the current situation to a proposed liability structure without even getting into refinancing a debt. And you simply do that by shrinking up the current liabilities. On step 4 on analyze, you simply shrink up the alternative liabilities as if there are no alternative liabilities for that client, and it automatically will switch into this mode that allows you to compare a variety of prepayment options. And this is an area that we are getting more and more feedback from loan officers who are really finding this as a fee source for them. They are charging both for the plan to create this. I mean, if you went to You First, or you went through some of these other programs, you could spend $2,000-3,000. If you go through some of the other courses out there on the internet, you spend $200-400 just to go through and get access to a calculator to do this. And this will create the plan for you. It shows you each liability and the order to pay them off, and you can attach the debt snowball report to give them some additional information. And but that's worth a lot. I mean, it's worth $200,000 to this client. Are you going to charge this client? I'm putting you on the spot here, but are you doing this for free? Or are you going to charge them a fee for it?
Well, since I did a mortgage for them,
yep.
this is free.
This is
okay?
free. So just
but I am seriously considering what should I do here, because actually, with the whole equity situation in the housing market now, there's a lot of clients who could benefit from a refi if they had the equity, but they don't. And so they can't refinance. And so what you end up doing is saying, but look at all these other opportunities. And so where I meet with a client that I think they may want to do a refinance, what I end up doing is giving them good advice on how to get out of debt without even doing mortgage. And so it just kind of takes me down that road of transitioning to a way that's got to be a fee-based thing.
Yeah, and I talked to a financial advisor just yesterday who was asking for a loan officer in Florida because he was looking for somebody that could help him. He wanted to do snowballing for his clients to get them to 80% LTV because he had so many clients that were at 100% or 95% LTV. He's like, I just want to sit down, show my clients a plan, show them how long it would take them to get to 80% LTV first. Then we refinance, take advantage of the low interest rates. So in many cases, we're talking here about having someone debt-free completely in 9 years, 2 months. But if you just had to get them to 80% LTV, you could do that possibly in 9 to 12 months, right? And that then would allow them to refinance. And he said it'll be a win for me because it'll help my clients. It'll be a win for the loan officer because they'll get the business. I just need somebody that can help me do this. And there are different ways to think about how you position yourself and also what you charge for these services.
And so, I've really only with a couple clients have I really had enough guts to take my laptop and actually go through what I had for them so far, have their case in there, and even begin to open this up so they could see it. And every time I do it, I feel a little more comfortable to the point now where this is actually going to be part of my initial consultation with a client. And I'm going to basically open this up as, say, this is the way I earn my lifetime relationship with you.
Absolutely. And one thing that you mentioned earlier, which was such an important part for us, you've heard the concept of an exit strategy, an entrance strategy. I mean, when you borrow, you're making a 20, 30-year commitment to pay back money. And everyone knows if I borrow $100,000, I'm not going to pay back $100. I'll pay back $200 or $300. And we just couldn't find any way to help people understand that the repayment strategy is as important as the borrowing strategy. That's why we say borrow smart and repay smart. Figure out how to optimize your current borrowing, get the right interest rate and the right product, and do everything you can on the front end to minimize your cost. Then work with somebody to help make sure that you've got a strategy for how you're going to repay the debt. Because how you repay that debt over time could have, as we're seeing here, I mean, the loan itself is $245 and the savings is about $233. So you're talking about a 100% discount here to what they're borrowing just through the savings of helping them understand a concept like snowballing their debt. Very powerful.
And the other thing is that you're not really locked into just prepaying the mortgage.
Exactly.
You can because that's not my favorite way to do things.
Sure.
Actually, I would rather that they have the liquidity of a side fund, and then they have the power of decision at any point in time. Because usually when you need the money is when you can't get it.
Exactly. That's when you learn the lesson of life.
Right.
Liquidity is when you need the money. We're looking at putting a paper together. It's the debt snowball, and we're writing a paper called Asset Snowball. And the idea is it works the exact same way, except in this case the client takes the 2868, and they would pay off all their debts that are at a higher interest rate than their current cost of borrowing or current opportunity cost for investing. And then once they get to that point, everything starts going into a side fund. So if they're, if they believe their current, I think you had close to 6%, 5.9% here was their tax-free rate of return.
Right.
They'd pay off all the debts over 5.9 first with the snowball, and the second they get that last debt paid off, then they start to build wealth through snowballing that cash flow for assets and leave the debts that are under 5.9. That way, that gives them a quick way to earn the highest return initially, and then over time build the most wealth for really what would be the least risk.
Exactly.
And
so,
any other? I mean, I don't want to keep this too long. This is great though. Any other kind of key things that you find are really helpful when you're sitting down, with a new client?
Well, I guess you touched on it initially, but just to reemphasize the value of having the client be able to look at my desktop remotely. This client that I have up here is an hour away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I told, and they're very busy, and they struggle with finding enough time so that I make the trip. They have an hour available. When I said to them, how about if we do a remote connection where you actually can see my desktop? And so not only were they impressed by this software initially when I told them about it, but now they're even more impressed because now we can in 20 minutes, instead of having to set an hour aside because I'm doing all this traveling and they feel guilty, now we can just grab 20 minutes or a half an hour and kind of work through and update all their numbers and come up with the snowball plan. How many hundreds of dollars do we want to pay down and all that stuff. So that whole issue of being able to link up to your desktop, for me, even though most of my clients are face-to-face, it's really valuable.
Yeah, and you're in Chicago right now, and I'm in North Carolina right now, and I'm recording this screen by basically recording your desktop as you show it to me. So we're sitting here talking. If I was a client in North Carolina, we could be having a conversation as you go through screen by screen and kind of talk through with me the plan and the strategy. And it really does. I've had a couple interesting conversations with loan officers who are working with realtors or builders in their model, and the client sits there and they talk over the phone and they show them on the screen different loan comparisons side by side. Or I had someone who's basically gone into another state because he had a sister who was a realtor in another state, got licensed there because now he's doing all of her client business via desktop sharing, and had never even considered that a possibility before because he didn't feel like they could drive or he could communicate clearly, and this has allowed him to do that. So it is a very, very unique way to visualize, and a picture's worth 1,000 words. You could talk for an hour about this stuff, but as you're talking about it and I'm seeing it, it makes a world of difference.
And I'll tell you the other fun thing of being a part of this now is that if you start using it, you're going to start having suggestions and issues that come up, and you can actually influence the way things are fixed, created, rolled out. And that's also kind of fun if you're a little bit of a techie geek like I am.
Yeah, that's right. You helped us with some of the FHA stuff and the things we've been changing there, and the ongoing feedback's been phenomenal. Well, any other little features you want to point out, or things that you would call tricks of the trade that have helped you with recent client conversation or engagement?
And I'm just going to talk through it because this one was a refinance, and it's an FHA, And it's something that if you did it on before tax, it looked like a good thing. But then all I have to do is say, let's look at after tax, and it turns out that it really only advanced their case a couple months. The monthly benefit went from roughly $95 a month to like 40, and it really didn't advance their situation at all. And so, just to really bring out that this is the only piece of software that I know of that really does a good job that's explainable to the client of the before and after tax. It really allows you to take that step and really give them the best advice, because the after tax is really the real truth. And yet, how many times have we justified points or refinancing just based on the gross difference? And, it really is powerful when clients can see that you're not just in it for the commission, you're in it for giving them the right advice.
Yeah, the case study we did last week on Should Laura Buy Now, that was an important point, because if I'd shown her a rent versus own pre-tax, then it was dramatically overstating her cost, because one of the big benefits for her of going from renting to buying was that when I clicked after tax, it immediately showed that her payment was going to be $300 to $400 less, because currently she had no way to take advantage of those particular deductions that would come from the renting. And you'll find that there are times when you click after tax and the savings isn't going to be quite as high, because if you're taking someone from 6% to 4%, you're paying a lot less interest, but that savings is showing up in other places in the form of a lower payment and stuff. So don't be afraid to say, look, your pre-tax savings is $500 a month, your after-tax is $400, because that's the reality of the much lower interest rate and the impact it'll have on your taxes. There's still a great story to tell there. You don't have to overinflate, because most people would be quite happy with $400 a month in net savings.
So, again, I mean, if you just follow this, what I'm doing here on the screen with these sliders, you can do it for after-tax savings. You can do it for time frame. If you wanted to look at this just over 3 years, it dynamically recalculates. I mean, as you're trying to think out what's the right strategy for a person, it's part of the problem-solving process to do these variations. And, the harder it is for you to run the numbers, probably the less strong is your advice and the less sound is the advice you're going to give people. So not only is it a presentation tool for clients, but I think it gives you the ability to really ring out options a lot better.
Yeah, we keep saying we'll do the math. You guys perform the magic. The magic is in the presentation. And one of the best practices that I learned last week from Adam is he starts at year one on his slider and then goes out from there. And what that allows him to do, like right now at 4 years, you can see that there's $6,500 in savings. I mean, that's real money to people. Sometimes you go out 30 years and $250,000 is like, that almost seems impossible that you could save me that much money. But we're talking about time value of money and compounding of interest here. And if you start at the low end and say a year or two and say, look, you're already net positive after just a year or two, and if we go out 5 to 10 years, you can see how that savings continues to grow for that client, and it really starts to make sense. And you can put it in real terms. $10,000 or $33,000 over 10 years is about $3,000 a year, which is about $250 a month. I like to put it in simple terms. Would you do something right now that's going to take you a couple hours of paperwork if I could save you $250 a month over the next 10 years? And a lot of people would say, well, shoot, yeah, if I could do that, that'd be great. And they say, look, I'm only going to charge you for the first month. I'll charge you $250 to do all this work and put the plan together for you. And after that, the next 9 years, 11 months, that $250 a month is going to be yours. How does that sound? Use that as a way to transition into simply taking the savings that are made possible by your transaction, and then quantify that in terms of the only thing I'm going to charge you for is my time to put the information together. There's no refinance you have to do here, no qualifying, but I would charge you, just for the plan itself to put together the strategy for you. because I'm going to encourage you and other people listening to this. The financial planning industry went through a major transformation, and a lot of that income now comes from these planning type fees. And these are fees that are for a potential return that they might generate over time. But a lot of this, I mean, this is a risk-free, fundamentally, a program that you're putting together for this client. I mean, you're simply saying you're spending $28.68 a month now, and you're going to continue to spend $28.68 a month. And I'm going to show you how to optimize and pay those liabilities off. And click the highest interest rate first button, because that's another option there. And all that does is it recalculates everything based on you paying the highest interest first. And you'll see that in many cases, it has just a very small difference. And I'm a fan of lowest balance first, because you're kind of going with the momentum and helping that client start to get some early wins. But in some cases, I've seen that number be $5,000 to $10,000 difference, because they had a couple of debts that were very high interest rate and some other debts that were much lower. So you can, again, with a single click, you can see whether that's meaningful. And sometimes you don't know, and that's where you need to play with this. Click a button, it won't hurt it, and slide it across and see how your story comes together for your client, and then prepare to very visually help them understand the impact of your advice. And if you do that, your clients will profit from your experience. They'll tell others about you. And that's another way you can get people to tell your story. I'll close with this one point. I had a financial advisor I was talking to recently about this topic, and I wasn't even sure, Jack, what we were going to talk about here. So it's interesting that you brought up this idea of just helping clients with repayment strategy. And this advisor said, I've never worked with loan officers because I'm just always afraid that they're going to turn my client down, and that's going to reflect negatively on me. And I said to this advisor, I said, what if I could approve every single client for something, some kind of a savings or value? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, I don't know that I can do a loan for every client, because quite honestly, a lot of your clients may not even have a need for a loan. But what I can do is, if they don't have a need for a loan today, I'll still provide them with a strategy for optimizing how they repay the debt they have today. Meaning, if they apply for a loan and they can't get a loan, the LTV's too bad, their credit's bad, I can still help them. And I showed him a simple plan, kind of like what we're talking about here, where I showed him a repayment strategy, and he was blown away, because he's like, I have no problem if I feel like my clients are going to get something of value. My concern is they're going to be sold something, they're going to get excited about a mortgage, they're going to get turned down or whatever. So consider this, Jack and others that are listening to this. If you sit down with a financial advisor, a CPA, if you're a loan officer, and you can give them a risk-free opportunity for their clients, I'll analyze their information. If there's a benefit for refinancing, I'll do that. And if there's no benefit for refinancing, I'll tell your client that too. And I'll still help them create a plan for how they can optimize the repayment of their debt. And that savings I'll share with you, meaning I'll share with you how much they're saving. In this case, $33,000 or about $250 a month over 10 years. That might be $250 a month that you go ahead and get them to start contributing towards a college fund, towards some retirement goals, towards some insurance they need, and you can start to work together. And that advisor will start to look at you as that authority and that relationship that they want to build their business with. So thanks for your time, Jack. This was great. It's just so great to hear someone out there in the field and how you're using it and profiting from it. And heck, I look forward to getting feedback from you and working with you to keep making it a better tool.
Great. You just all you have to do is use it. It really comes quickly if you just begin.
Yeah, it's just going to take a couple of plans, and it'll start to click for you. And you found the videos helpful? Going through those initial videos was helpful?
Yeah, it's very helpful.
Great. I encourage people to do that as well. Well, thanks so much for your time, Jack.
Okay.
Take care and have a great day.
Thanks.